Welcome back to ChatChit. Round 9 in the books, and this one was a cool one because we had the top 8 teams in the AFL all playing against each other in 4 games. First time this century that it's happened, and we got some really, really nice results.
Finals type atmospheres at some of the games as well.
Definitely. 4 amazing games that we had there, and some good ones outside of that too. Aiden, let's kick it straight off with our top 5 players of the round. Who's your number 5?
Great. My number 5 was Paddy Cripps. So 35 touches, a goal. He sort of was a dual position player in this game. He was time in the middle, getting clearances, but he was also spent time in the forward line. I think he's a great addition when he can move forward and be that like goal kicking midfielders. I think what we've seen in the competition is if you've got goal kicking midfielders in your team, and we've seen it especially from the team to beat at the moment, the Swans. Their top line midfielders are all kicking goals. When that happens and they can get forward and be damaging like that, it's hugely influential on the game. And I think he was massive. Him and Walsh, it was sort of a toss up who was going to put in. But yeah, he's my number 5.
Good. But based on your previous behaviour, you could have put both there. But
I could have put both. Yeah. Okay. 70 disposals. Yeah.
At number 5, I've got James Harms.
Okay, I like that.
Did you have him in there?
I didn't have him in there.
Had a huge performance against Richmond. If you're just looking at stat lines, you'd probably have him at number 1 or 2 this week. But Richmond didn't put up much.
The opposition.
Richmond did not put up much resistance. But geez, James Harms, a guy that had a great role in Melbourne, and he's come over to the Bulldogs not knowing if he'd have, and we didn't really know if he'd have that same role. But he's made the most of it this game.
He was sort of been in and out of the team, and that was a big game for him. But I think, is it getting to the point where we have to start not putting players in when they play against Richmond as well? Because at the moment, I have a rule that you can't put players in when they played against North.
Crazy stat. The Sydney, well above the rest of the league right now. Only team they've lost to is Richmond.
Yeah.
And Swans are the only team Richmond's beat. They're 9-1 and 1-9.
Yeah, I'm
crazy.
Not exactly
I
sure.
don't know how that happened. Yeah.
My number 4 was Jason Horne-Francis.
Wow.
I'm not sure. I don't know if you had him in there, but when this guy gets 20 touches, I think teams really struggle to beat Port. He's explosive, damaging, and also really great in the forward line. I think he plays a similar role to, in this game specifically, to Neil Bullen in being in the forward line and coming up as an extra. And I just think when you can get him on the ball, powering through, you can see why he was drafted number 1. And he connects. He's a great field kick. He's great in the clearance. And I think in this game specifically, especially the first half, he absolutely dominated that Geelong midfield.
That's really interesting. I'd love to see a stat on how Port's win-loss when he gets 20 and when he gets less than 20.
I wanted to actually find that, but I didn't have the time to get that stat. But that'd be interesting.
Yeah. At number 4, I have Nick Dacos.
Okay.
Do you not have him in there?
I didn't have him
So we've got 4 different players. I like it. We've changed. I think I've got more players you don't have. So.
I think so as well. I think we'll have the same number 1.
Yeah, and everyone else will be different, I think.
But yeah. I didn't put Nick Dacos in just because of the opposition. But yeah.
I thought... Well, his opposition was a West Coast team that we've got to pay some respect to, so I'm not going to cut that.
I know, but no Yo, no Waterman. I just thought... I mean, they look like they're like toad, to be honest. But yeah, fair enough.
I was lucky enough
you still got to put up the performance.
And I was lucky enough to watch the game while it was a bit of a cakewalk for Collingwood, pun in their team song.
Thank you.
But Nick Dacos was just, he was unbelievable. He was so clean. A goal, 36.
His goal out of the centre as well.
Yeah, and you can't claim that he's just getting easy touches anymore. He led this game in contested possessions comfortably with 17. He's up there in the league in tough ball gets and contested possessions. And all those doubters that say he gets cheapies at the back and looks good doing it, they've got nothing to say now.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I would have put him in, but I just think there are so many guys that have a right to be in the top 5. And I'm going to go against my word here because I said it's an easy thing to do to put a performance in against Richmond, but I've got Marcus Bontempelli at number 3. He
would have been number 6 for me.
Fair. He had 2 goals and 32 touches, 19 contested possessions, 14 score involvements, 10 clearances. I mean, a stat line alone probably gets you in the top 5, but he absolutely walked through a hapless Richmond. And a win that the Bulldogs needed to get. And still you have to show up on the day and you have to get the win. They did that. He was walking through Dustin Martin. Shai Bolton looked half the player he usually is. But yeah, he put up the stats. He won his team the game, along with Harms, along with Darcy, who had a great game down forward, and Norton as well, kick 4. But yeah, I thought it was hugely influential.
Yeah, I think I've got some expectation bias on why I don't have him there. I reckon if someone not called Marcus Bontempelli puts up that performance, I've probably got them at number 1.
That's fair. That's fair.
You sort of expect certain things from him.
Yeah.
So fair enough. At number 3, I've got Rowan Marshall.
Oh, interesting. I didn't have him. I love this because you're not going to have my number 2.
And you're not going to have mine. In a losing team performance against Hawthorn, a team that's playing absolutely horrible football, Rowan Marshall stood up. He got, oh my gosh, I need to get a stat line up. He got 35 hit-outs. He got 11 tackles. He got 28 disposals, 23 contested. And when you watch that game, that's 35 hit-outs plus, I'm going to say, I could have thought of about 10 occasions where he just stole the ball out of the ruck and cleared it. And you can see here he got 12 clearances.
So I'm just looking at the stat line now. I didn't clock this at all.
He played just ridiculously. And even though...
12 clearances.
Yeah, it was... Lloyd Meek could not manage him around the ground. Lloyd Meek is really solid in the ruck contests, getting a lot of hit-outs himself, but he could not manage Rowan Marshall around the ground. He was everywhere, doing everything he could for his team. But, geez, I've heard a little bit of analysis about it, but Ross Lyon needs to be changing the way that St Kilda play. But maybe...
Did you see his interview after? He's not owning that he's like sort of part of the reason why it's not happening. Like, is clearly his game style is not working. He's not allowing the forwards to kick goals.
In their attack. Because so many talented, quick players in their team.
They've got one of the most talented half-back lines in the
AFL.
Most. But it's awful. I mean, their forwards aren't getting any sort of service. But yeah, I'll go into my number 2. I had Matt Guelphy at number 2.
Just fourth quarter.
But no, not even that. He tagged Whitfield. He did an awesome job. I don't know if it was an idea because the Swans did it the week before. James Jordan did an awesome job. Everything that the Giants do, they want to move it through Whitfield, and if you can lock him down, and he did, it's exactly it goes a long way to winning the game for your team. And not only that, he kicked 3 goals as well. He was hugely influential as a forward.
I love this
and it wasn't just a tagger. I think he was huge. Yes, he'll get a bit of notice because he kicked the 3 goals, and that's why we'll talk about it.
2 in the fourth quarter.
2 in the fourth quarter. Yeah, it's obviously that's why
we're going
to talk about it. Except even if he didn't kick those goals, I still think he's got a shout for this top 5 because of the job he did on Whitfield in this game.
I love that.
I just wanted to the appreciation for the tagger.
And did you see his celebrations for his goals? He did the same celebration for all 3. You saw it?
Yeah.
And you saw the background? He had his nails out, pink nails painted by I don't know what disease, but some sick
I don't remember.
A sick kid. She painted his nails.
Oh yeah, and why they did the celebration. I saw the video on Instagram after. Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. Just shout out to the tagger. I'm a big fan of the tagger.
Yeah. At number 2, I had Ollie Wines.
Oh, I love it. I love this. We're usually so similar. We haven't had the same yet. We're going to have the same number 1.
We have not had a player that has been on both of our lists yet. We'll have the same number 1. Ollie Wines put up a Brownlow performance. We haven't seen him be at that level.
I like it.
He's been a bit out of favour in Port's midfield last year and not at the start of this year because they've had injuries in Horn Francis and Rosie having a bit of inavailability and with Willem Drew becoming stronger. But Ollie Wines was dominant in a huge win against Geelong, who many were starting to see as potential premiership favourites alongside Sydney and GWS. And, geez, to get Port's first win at GMHBA or against Geelong at
2007?
home. 2006 or 7.
Yeah,
which is just crazy.
And Travis Boak was in game 10. His game 10.
Wow. And he's now played 300?
He's now played 300 games, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
When they last won the GMHBA.
You never see Ken Hinkley carry on, but
did you see him?
He did it like 3 different times.
Yeah, he was absolutely loving it. And congratulations to them for getting over the line when they were under the pump at the end. I love that.
So maybe you saw Jason Horne-Francis as the most influential and he was awesome. I saw Wines as even more influential.
I love it. Square head. Now let's go to number 1, and we're going to have the same number 1. I don't even have to check it. But it's Christian Petrarca, 100%.
In a losing performance.
When your team is looking down and you're being tagged, that's how you put the team on your back and really force the issue. Like, force them back into the game. I don't know where he ranks as a forward in the competition, but to kick 5 goals when your team looks hopeless and get around the ground, just being involved in everything with a tag, it was just incredible. I didn't even know what I was watching half the time. I don't know how you saw it, but that's one of the best performances I've ever seen.
Yeah, he was unbelievable to be tagged that hard, and 5 goals and 20-something is the stat line. But that game could have gone either way. We know that that's the case with most Carlton games these days, but Petrarca was such a huge influence, and it was one of those performances where every time he was near the ball, it was really great things were happening for Melbourne, and when he wasn't near it, that's where Carlton would be. Like, it was just like to have what in AFL you have 36 players on the field at each time. One player can't have that much influence, but it was just the most visible influence I've seen in such a long time.
I don't remember what point it was in the game, but he was being tagged by Kennedy in the first quarter, and he was doing a great job. Petrarca didn't have much ball. He hadn't kicked a goal, didn't have many touches. But I don't know if it was him or it was the coach, but he was just like, screw this. Went forward, kicked 5 goals, got 4 clearances, 20 touches, and almost got his team back.
Yeah, and the
back
Carlton
to the win.
defence was trying to get into him, and he just kept charging
mate.
along. He got fired up.
He's the
except he
guy.
kept
Did you
going.
see that one? It was
Yeah,
a
he
stoppage
threw him
at
to
the
the
end. He
ground.
threw him to the ground.
Free kick could have been paid, and that would have been a horrible way for the game to end.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. I love the passion. I love the passion to get your team back into the game. But we'll move on to the next segment, hits and misses. Do you want to kick us off with a miss?
I'll kick us off with the miss, and my miss is umpires paying high free kicks to players that are putting their own heads in danger.
There was a clear one this weekend, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was one that came to, was the most obvious, and it was I think Brody Kemp against Melbourne.
I think so, yeah.
And it was a Carlton defender, I think Brody Kemp. But there are occasions of it in almost every game, or I will say every game, where players intentionally put their heads in vicious contact so that they can get a free kick, and umpires are paying it. And I've talked about it previously on this podcast, that if the outcome we want is less head injuries
You can't pay it.
and less head trauma, then don't encourage players to be throwing their heads into the ground, which is what we see. We see players throwing their own heads into the ground because of this dangerous tackle rule, which you've got to find, and I know it's a buzzword, but you have to find the balance between being strict on the tackler and being equally strict on the player with the ball. And that's all I'll say on that.
Yeah, I'll also just say he looked like he was gone for all money. Like he was holding the ball and he just threw his head right into the ground. One of the clearest ones we've seen, and it hated when it was paid.
He tried to throw his head back in the tackle, and then when he realised he wasn't getting paid that, he threw it into the ground.
Yeah. I'll go into my miss, and I know the Swans got a massive win, but I think the Freo vs Swans game actually going ahead. I think Freo looked off the pace, and I think the AFL actually have a role here. In no other profession in the world will they make you come in when a close mate has passed. You can take personal leave for a few days, which gives you time to get in the right headspace. And I know that leaves you in a bit of a grey area, because you played at GWS, do you make that game go ahead? If a close mate of someone who wasn't part of the AFL, do you potentially move that game? But I just think in that specific instance, when the close mate of a couple of them, Fife and Pearce especially, passed the night before, there's just a role you have to play, and you have to move. I think you move the game there.
Fair enough. That's a fair point.
I know it's tough, because then it gets to a grey area where you don't know.
No, logistics don't matter in that case. But to play devil's advocate, what I'd say there is, who knows if they gave Fremantle that offer? They probably would have made that public if they did. But I'm sure that if you asked Fife and Pearce, I'm pretty sure they'd say that they wanted to play in his honour.
Fair. That's also
would have motivated them. And who says that Fremantle couldn't have won that game? And then you say that they were actually seem to have been motivated by it.
I get that. That's just from looking out. It was just it's tough to see when the players are crying before the game starts. I just feel like it was tough to be in the right headspace. But yeah, just want to put it out there.
Very fair.
What's your hit?
My hit is that there is a distance between the Swans and the next best team.
I like it.
I don't know. Who would you say there's a clear second best team in the AFL right now? I don't think there is.
Maybe Collingwood now.
And I agree with you, but I don't think many people would say that. I think people would say Geelong or GWS, maybe Melbourne, but and maybe Collingwood. But looking at the stats, Swans are the number 1 team for points scored at the end of round 9. Number 1 team for points conceded, the least conceded. They have the best percentage in the league by 28 percentage points.
It's almost like they're 2 wins ahead of second there.
We have the Brownlow medal favourite sitting in our midfield, and we have Luke Parker, a 3-time best and fairest.
Did you see his barrel to win the game for the VFL team?
A 75-metre barrel, which bounced before the line, and somehow North didn't stop it.
North Melbourne things.
But we have a Luke Parker, who's played 3 games in the VFL and had 3 best on-ground performances, struggling to get back into the team. We don't know if he'll get picked
on that. I think the Swans have always been great in getting their players settled and back into footy before they put him back in the first team. The only exception was Buddy. That I've seen in the past few years.
Putting this in the context of how this list and this team is developed, 2 years ago, this team made a grand final way too early. As in, not too early as in I didn't like how early it was. Too early as in no one expected them to. So people saw that we had young, talented players, your Errol Gouldens, your Chad Warners, your Nick Blakeys, but no one thought it would happen that quick, and yet we surprised everyone and made it. Had a bit of a setback last year, but we have seen that we have that talent now with a bit of experience and maturity, and this team is dominant.
Just off the top of your head, who does Parker come in for?
I was discussing this with 3 different people today. There are 2 possibilities in my mind.
Yeah.
I would have said Jake Lloyd a couple weeks ago, but he's playing great.
He's playing good.
He's playing great. Parker will have to go into the forward line.
Yeah.
He won't go into the midfield, and he'll come in for, I think, either Sam Wicks, but I don't think he should.
I was thinking someone else.
I think he should come in for McLean.
Ooh.
And I think we play him as him and Hayward between them can be a third quasi-tall. You already have Amadi and Logan up there. Obviously, McLean gives you that second ruck option, but Amadi can do that too. And I think between Logan and Parker, Hayward, Amadi, we have enough height there.
It's interesting because it's a great headache to have. And I don't think there's no one obvious that you can take out of the team.
Who are you thinking?
I was thinking potentially Matt Roberts of the past few weeks, and maybe Robbie Fox comes in, and maybe Parker starts as the sub, and then you go from there.
You don't start Parker as the sub.
But no, I know it's tough. I just can't put my finger on who you can actually take out because I love like Wicks' forward pressure. Our 3 talls are doing great. McLean's a good second ruck.
I don't think McLean's playing well.
I don't think he's playing well, but I think he's playing good enough in his position.
I think he has good spurts where he like lays tackles, maybe takes a couple big marks, but I think he gets intercept marked on too much and doesn't use his body well enough. And I also think that he disappears for certain sections of matches where if he's not finding that big moment, he's not contributing. So I think I would not be against giving McLean a break and trying Parker and like along with Hayward as a third tool.
Fair. I don't think they're going to do anything this week against Carlton. Maybe when there's a different fixture, like an easier fixture, they might look to bring him in. I just can't see how he gets in this week.
He's just had 2 best on ground performances followed by a 75-metre barrel to win the game.
I know.
Okay,
it's tough.
Let's move on to your hit, but there's lots of discussion to be had. It's a great headache to have, as you say.
From all the talk we've had in this season so far, do we have a new contender for the premiership? 6.5 wins in 9. The Essendon Edge. They have North, Richmond, Gold Coast, Carlton and West Coast in the next 5. You'd expect them to win at least 4 of them, which really sets up their season perfectly. I think they've got damaging players from all over the ground. Nick Martin going forward looks awesome for them. And I just think if they can rack up those wins, they can have 10.5 wins in 13 games or 14 games. And they're only going to need another 3 or 4 wins to make the 8. And I just think they've got players around the ground that can win games for them. Even when Merritt had a quiet game for his standards, they were still able to take it to a premiership favourite or the former premiership favourite and win the game comfortably in the end. I think Redman has found a bit of form.
He had a huge game.
He had a massive game. Sam Durham is
he's
the most underrated player in the league.
Yeah,
I know you might think he's the second most underrated player in the league.
Miles Bergman, most underrated player.
But they've just got players who are playing their roles now. They were really putting in a shift. Peter Wright, I know we're not a fan of him, but he's doing well. Langford.
I think the commentator said it really well. I forget who it was when he said that Essendon, the main criticism or one of the big criticisms of them over the last however many years, and there's been a lot of criticisms, is that they're not a hard team to play against. Even when they get wins, it's a relatively easy game or whatever. They're not a hard team to play against, and that's what they're becoming with this new midfield, especially that they've got going. They've had they've had some solid defenders over the last few years, but they now have a sort of tough midfield with guys like Durham, Caldwell, these hungry guys trying to build their reputation, who are really setting them up nicely. I have to backtrack on my miss from last week when I said that I thought Essendon were deceiving us on the ladder and they weren't as good as they've
taken a
seemed.
Scalp now.
They've taken a scalp. I don't think they're a premiership contender. I'm
Fair.
not going that far. I'd put still 7 teams ahead of them.
Fair. I'm going to jump on the bandwagon. We potentially have a premiership contender. But moving to our next segment, the Footy Pyramid. We have one out this week, and that's Lachie Neale. Lachie Neale is out. He's been jumping in and out so far. The game is currently tied at 64 all at the moment, and Lachie Neale isn't having a massive game. So unless he has a huge final quarter, he's going to stay out of the pyramid for now. In our 5th tier, we have Tom Green returning to the pyramid. Yes, they lost, but he had a massive game.
He did.
Yo is moving down in the pyramid. He's just going to lose to the injury here. I didn't want to take him out yet, but next week I think it might be his time to go. Walsh holds his spot in the 5th tier. Goulden holds his spot, and Sam Taylor also holds his spot, who had an awesome game. I know they lost as well, but the commentators absolutely love him. In the 4th tier, Petrarca moving up. He hated going down. He was just slowly moving down all the way from the top to the 2nd, to the 3rd, to the 4th, to the 5th tier, and then puts in the performance of the season. Back up to the 4th tier, but you don't get to move up that far for one performance. Butters holds a spot, had a good performance. Cripps holds his spot, and Curnow holds a spot. Still has not moved this entire season. Moving up a tier to the third tier, Zach Merritt holds his spot. Sarong holds a spot, and Max Gawn moves down.
Ooh.
And that's not because he's been playing badly, but there's one player I just can't look past anymore. In the second tier is Nick Dacos, holds a spot, and Marcus Bontempelli is going to move up a tier. He's put together a few really, really incredible performances the last few weeks, and I just can't look past him anymore. He's just been unbelievable, deserves to move up. And Heaney, he's going to stay on top. It's going to be really tough for anyone to take him over. I think this is the first game this season he hasn't kicked a goal. And
yet I have him getting 3 Brownlow votes. I've been harsh on his Brownlow.
Wow.
I do a Brownlow predictor for every game. I thought he was the best on the ground.
He was one of 3 players in the history that had kicked a goal
and got 20.
And 20 first 8 games or 9 games in the league. I think the other one was Joe Watson and someone else. I can't remember who. But yeah, he's going to be really tough to dethrone this season. He's been awesome. But yeah, that's the pyramid. It's sitting right in front of you on the table here. Let me know what you think.
Love it.
We'll move on to our next segment.
The power rankings. And North Melbourne they're starting to pay rent in 18th place. Wow. And then in 17th place, we have moving down Richmond. And I think it's fair to say
it's going to be tough to dethrone North Melbourne this season, I think. Wow.
Almost as tough as dethroning Isaac Heaney. Now, in West Coast moved down 1 to 16, and that's only really thanks to the performances that we've seen from Hawthorn in the last few weeks. And it's still not going to be Hawthorn in 15th. I have St Kilda there.
Wow.
They can't score. This is a team that I predicted to come 6th at the start of the year.
You weren't alone. They were definitely a top 8 favourite.
I was confident about that. I felt really good about St Kilda with another year, like a full year with Ross Lyon at the helm, a full pre-season. I just thought they looked great, but Ross Lyon's coaching plan is not working. They cannot score enough goals. They're defending okay. We know this about Ross Lyon. They need to score goals. Now I have Hawthorn in 14th. I'd love to put them higher, but some of the mid-table sides have started to perform can't be leapfrogged. But 3 wins in 4 games. It's finally a bit of success for Sam Mitchell this season, and I love to see it because I like this Hawthorn team.
Without Sicily and Lewis as well for that win. So yeah, got players to come back still.
Huge. So love to see that from Hawthorn. I know St Kilda are below them here, but that was a huge upset for them. Then I have the Western Bulldogs in 13th. As we said earlier,
moving down a spot.
Moving down a spot. A huge, a 90-point win. Richmond didn't give them much.
I guess, yeah.
The reason that I've got them at 13th is that I like the look of Adelaide at the moment. And Adelaide are finding form. I think they really just didn't have anything going in their midfield earlier, and they found something in Jake Saligo, Isaac Rankin, Josh Rochelle giving them some energy in the midfield, as well as Jordan Dawson hitting form. And they, I think, could really make a charge to sneak into 8th place maybe.
Oof, wow, that's a call.
I don't think it'll happen.
That'll be tough.
I don't think it'll happen, but it's possible. In 11th, I have Gold Coast.
Holding their spot
after a good win. I have Brisbane in 10th, and this is dependent on the performance, assuming they can clutch a win against
Currently
Adelaide.
Three-quarter time. What's it? Adelaide up by a point.
Yep. Then in 9th, I have Freo, who were probably the big losers of those big top 8 matches, but as you said, they were extenuating circumstances. We've seen them. It's really interesting. They've had 5 wins and 4 losses. We've seen them have 5 really, really amazing games. I think they've looked so impressive in their wins. They've looked possibly like a top 4 team, and they dominate teams because they just dominate possession of the ball when they win.
They don't concede points.
Yeah. But when they lose, sometimes they look really inferior to their opposition.
I mean, West Coast as well, we throw back to that loss.
Absolutely, where they lost really comfortably to West Coast. So it's interesting with Freo, and you're not sure what you're going to get out of them each week, which is why they sit right in the middle. In number 8, I've got Carlton.
Well, moving down 2 places.
Despite a win against Melbourne.
Yeah.
What?
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. I want to see where this goes.
Can I tell you the reason I have Carlton moving down to?
Yeah, go on.
The teams that were surrounding them were Port Adelaide and Essendon, who I think have had better runs of form and got more impressive scalps. All 3 of those teams got huge scalps. Carlton at the MCG.
So you don't reckon they should be above Melbourne?
No, I don't.
Your power rankings.
No, I don't. And can I tell you, Carlton, they're not going to win the premiership if they can't beat anyone by more than 10 points.
I'm telling you, the premiers of last year...
No. Collingwood, we're not doing it this much. Carlton, They need to be able to actually take a hold of games. They can't just be getting gutsy wins through pure effort in the fourth quarter every single week. And they're not winning them every week. They're losing half of them.
Bold.
And I've got Carlton 8th. Because Port Adelaide in 7th and Essendon in 6th both took humongous scalps against Geelong and GWS respectively, and demanded to leapfrog Carlton. Because both those teams looked a bit better. Like, Geelong came back a bit late, but Port put forward a really good four-quarter performance. We've talked enough about Essendon, but yes, they're above Port and Carlton. In 5th, I have Melbourne holding their spot there in a 1-point loss in 5th place. Geelong in 4th, who, yes, they've lost the last 2 after winning their first 6 or first 7, but they've lost both games in a really tight way, and we know with Chris Scott they're going to be there at the end of the year. In 3rd place, I have GWS, and this is where, form-wise, they're probably sitting around 7th or 8th, maybe lower. But the vibe I have with GWS, I know that they're going to bounce back. I just know it in my heart. There's just too much talent in that team flowing through everywhere, and that orange tsunami is going to return. In number 2, I have Collingwood. I had them in number 2 last week.
You made the jump last week, and
you were very surprised by it.
Yeah, I was.
I know that there is like a Fox Ascend Footy Power Rankings or whatever. They had Collingwood at 6th still. And I went early on Collingwood, just seeing how they're playing. After those first 3 losses, they've gone undefeated. They're 5 wins and a draw since then on Anzac Day. And Collingwood look back to how they played last year. I was talking about the fear I have with this Collingwood team last week, and that has not changed this week. And in number 1, I'm going to put them really high on the 1, because that's where they really stand, is the Sydney Swans.
How do you think the game goes on Friday night against Carlton?
That's going to be the game of the round.
It's a massive game.
At the SCG.
At the SCG, yeah.
The fact that it's at the SCG, I honestly would have the Swans by 20 or so. Maybe more. I just think the way that this team plays right now, there's not a lot of weaknesses.
And McCartan probably to come back in for Francis as well.
Francis was poor.
He was really poor.
Yeah.
I'm a big...
Look, I don't want to finish on that.
Yeah, I'm a big lover of Francis, but he did look a bit off the pace.
As a fellow redhead, I'm sure you are. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next week.